The galaxy had forgotten the old warning. For thousands of years, every child in the Alliance learned the same story. Never search for humans. But over time, the warning became nothing more than an old myth. Young cadets laughed when teachers spoke about humanity. Scientists called the story fake. Even military commanders believed humans never existed. The galaxy had explored millions of worlds, but nobody had ever found Earth. No human ships, no human colonies, nothing. So the warning slowly died. Commander Verix believed the myth was nonsense. He stood on the bridge of the massive warship Iron Blood as stars moved outside the giant windows. Behind him, young officers quietly laughed while listening to an old broadcast from the Galactic archives. Humanity was dangerous, the ancient recording said, if you find them. Run. The bridge crew laughed loudly. Verix smiled. Fear created by primitive ancestors, he said. Nothing more. The crew agreed immediately. The Alliance was now the strongest force in the galaxy. Thousands of worlds obeyed them. Their fleets could destroy planets in minutes. No enemy could stand against them. At least, that was what everyone believed. Suddenly, a loud alarm echoed across the bridge. A nervous officer turned toward Verix. Commander, we received a distress signal. Verix crossed his arms. From where? The officer looked confused. Sector 9, he answered slowly. But that region is empty. The bridge became silent. Sector 9 was forbidden space. An abandoned area near dead stars and destroyed planets. No ships traveled there anymore. Verix walked toward the main screen. Play the signal, he ordered. Static filled the bridge. Then a terrified voice appeared. This is patrol ship KX-17, the voice said shakily. We found something drifting near the black zone. Loud explosions sounded in the background. The crew members looked at each other nervously. It attacked us, the voice continued. Our weapons are useless. Another explosion shook the recording. Then came the final words. It's human, the message ended. Silence covered the bridge again. Some officers laughed nervously. A prank, one officer whispered. But Verix did not laugh. Something about the fear in the voice felt real. Track the patrol ship, he ordered. An officer quickly scanned the sector. A moment later, his face turned pale. Commander, what is it? The patrol ship is gone, Verix frowned. Destroyed? The officer swallowed hard. No debris, no energy signs. It simply vanished. A cold feeling slowly spread across the bridge. Verix immediately gave new orders. Prepare jump engines, he said firmly. We are going to Sector 9. Several officers looked shocked. Commander, that area is unstable, one warned. Ships disappear there. Verix stared at the dark stars ahead. Then we find out why. Hours later, the Iron Blood entered Sector 9, the moment they arrived. Strange interference filled every system. Lights flickered across the bridge. Sensors failed randomly. Communication channels became filled with static. The entire region felt dead. No stars moved. No signals existed. Even space itself felt wrong. Then the scanners detected something. A massive object drifting in darkness. The crew zoomed the image closer. Everyone froze. It was an ancient warship. Its surface was blackened by age and battle scars. Huge metal wounds covered the hull. Strange symbols were painted across its side. Symbols nobody recognized. But one word could still be read clearly. Ares. The ship looked ancient, yet terrifying. Verix stared carefully at the silent vessel. No life signs? He asked. None, the scanner officer replied. But the reactor is still active. The bridge instantly became tense. That's impossible, someone whispered. The ship looked thousands of years old. No reactor could survive that long. Suddenly, the dead ship moved. Very slowly, its giant engines began glowing red. Warning alarms exploded across the bridge. Energy spike detected, shouted an officer. The old warship started turning toward them. Then every screen on the Iron Blood suddenly went black. For 3 long seconds, nothing appeared. Then a single message slowly emerged across every monitor. We warned you. Several crew members stepped back in fear. What is happening? Someone shouted. The lights flickered violently. A deep mechanical sound echoed through the ship. Then another message appeared. You should have stayed away. Commander Varix felt real fear for the first time in his life. The ancient ship suddenly powered its weapons. Massive energy readings flooded the scanners. Commander, the weapons officer yelled desperately. That ship is targeting us, Varix finally shouted. Battle stations! But before anyone could move, the dark warship vanished, not destroyed, not hidden, gone. The bridge crew stood frozen in confusion. Then the rear defense fleet screamed over communications. Unknown ship behind us. Everyone turned toward the main screen, and there it was. The ancient human warship now floated silently behind the Alliance fleet, like a predator standing behind helpless prey. Then one final message appeared across every screen in Sector 9. Humanity remembers. The entire Alliance fleet froze in silence. Nobody on the bridge of the Iron Blood moved. The ancient human warship floated behind them like a dark shadow from another age. Its massive body blocked the stars themselves. Commander Varix stared at the screen, unable to speak. The ship should not exist. Humans were myths, ghost stories, forgotten warnings told to children. But now the myth was real. And it was hunting them, Commander. The scanner officer whispered nervously, "We are detecting impossible energy levels." Varix finally forced himself to speak. "Open communication channels," he ordered. The officer hesitated. With the human ship? Now, Varix snapped. Static filled the bridge again. For several seconds, nothing answered. Then a deep, distorted voice echoed across every speaker. "You entered forbidden space." The voice sounded cold, not angry, not emotional, just deadly calm. Several younger officers looked terrified. Varix stepped closer to the console. "This region belongs to the Galactic Alliance," he said firmly. "Identify yourself." Silence answered him. Then the voice returned, "No." Suddenly every screen inside the Iron Blood changed again. Old images appeared across the monitors, burning planets, destroyed cities. Dead human soldiers lying beneath alien flags. The bridge crew watched in shock. "These recordings are ancient," one officer whispered. Another image appeared. A giant alien fleet attacking the blue planet, Earth. Varix slowly realized what he was seeing. This was not random footage. It was a memory, a warning. The human voice spoke once more. "You came to exterminate humanity." The officers looked confused. "That never happened," one officer argued quietly. But the ship instantly responded. History was erased. More images flooded the screens. Alien armies marching through human colonies. Cities burning beneath orbital bombardment. Children running through fire and smoke. The bridge became silent again. Nobody had ever seen these records before. The Alliance history books never mentioned a war against humans. Suddenly, the oldest officer on the bridge stepped forward slowly. His hands were shaking. "I know these symbols," he whispered. Everyone looked at him. Varix frowned. "What are you talking about?" The old officer swallowed hard. "My grandfather once told me a forbidden story," he said quietly. "A story the Alliance banned long ago." Nobody interrupted him. "He said humans were once part of the galaxy," the officer continued. "They fought beside many worlds." The bridge remained silent. But then something happened. "What?" Varix demanded. The old officer looked toward the human warship. The Alliance feared them. A cold feeling spread through the room. "Humans learned too fast," the officer continued. "They adapted faster than every species. New images appeared on the screens. Human scientists creating advanced weapons, human fleets defeating enemy empires, human soldiers surviving impossible battles. They became too powerful," the old officer whispered. The distorted voice returned again. "So your leaders betrayed us." Suddenly, the bridge lights turned blood red, warning, weapon systems active. Panic exploded across the crew. "Commander, their weapons are locking on," shouted the defense officer. Varix immediately grabbed the command rail. "All ships prepare shields," he ordered loudly. But deep inside, fear was growing rapidly. The scanner showed terrifying numbers. The human ship had only one vessel. Yet its power output was greater than the entire Alliance fleet combined. That's impossible, the engineer whispered. Then something even worse happened. Dozens of new signals suddenly appeared across Sector 9. The scanners blinked wildly. More ships! An officer yelled. Dark shapes slowly emerged from the shadows between dead planets. One after another, silent black warships appeared. Huge, ancient, terrifying, an entire hidden fleet. The crew watched in horror as the number continued rising. 20 ships, 50 ships, 100 ships, all human, all hidden inside Sector 9 for thousands of years. Commander Virix felt his throat go dry. This can't be real, he whispered. The human voice answered immediately. It is real enough. Then every human ship activated glowing red eyes across their hulls. The darkness of Sector 9 suddenly looked alive, like thousands of monsters opening their eyes together. One young officer lost control completely. We need to leave. He shouted, we need to run now. No one disagreed. Even Virix knew the truth now. The Alliance was not prepared for this enemy, not even close. Suddenly another signal reached the bridge. But this one did not come from the humans. It came from Alliance High Command. The face of Supreme Admiral Terran appeared on screen. Commander Virix, the Admiral said angrily. Explain your situation immediately. Before Virix could answer, the human voice interrupted the transmission. You sent soldiers once before. The Admiral's face instantly changed. Fear appeared in his eyes, real fear. The bridge crew noticed immediately. The Admiral knew about humans. He had known the truth all along. The human voice continued slowly. This time, humanity is ready. Then the transmission ended. And across the darkness of Sector 9, thousands of human weapons began charging together, like the galaxy itself preparing for war. Far from Sector 9, deep inside the golden capital world of the Alliance, panic had already begun spreading. The Senate towers of Nexer Prime had stood peacefully for centuries. Now emergency alarms echoed through every government hall. Military officers rushed through crowded command rooms. News networks suddenly went dark. Secret files were locked away within seconds. Because one impossible truth had returned, humanity was alive. Inside the highest chamber of the Galactic Council, Supreme Admiral Terran stood before dozens of frightened leaders. Nobody spoke at first. The giant screen behind Terran showed the image from Sector 9. Hundreds of ancient human warships floating silently in darkness. One council member finally broke the silence. You told us humanity was extinct, she said angrily. Terran looked exhausted. They were supposed to be, he answered quietly. The chamber exploded with shouting. You lied to the entire galaxy. You started this war. You hid the truth for thousands of years. Terran slammed his hand against the command table. Because humanity nearly destroyed us, he shouted. The room instantly became silent again. Slowly, Terran turned toward the screen. You have no idea what humans are capable of, he said. Then he activated a classified file. Warning! Omega Black Archive. Several council members looked confused. One elderly senator suddenly became pale. No, he whispered. That archive still exists? Terran nodded slowly. It was sealed after the human purge. The words shocked the room. Human purge. Many leaders had never heard those words before. The screen changed again. Ancient footage appeared showing human cities across Earth. Bright oceans, massive towers, peaceful civilizations. They were not monsters at first, Terran explained. They were explorers. The footage continued. Humans helping weaker planets. Humans fighting pirates. Humans sharing technology freely. They advanced faster than every species we had ever seen, Terran continued. In only 300 years, they became equal to the strongest empires. The council watched silently. Then the footage changed. Alien leaders arguing in secret meetings. Military fleets gathering quietly near human space. Fear had spread through the old alliance not because humans attacked anyone, but because humans refused to bow to anyone. They scared us, Terran admitted quietly. Another council member stood angrily. So you betrayed them? Terran did not answer immediately. That silence told everyone enough. The footage became darker. Alliance fleets suddenly attacking human colonies without warning. Entire planets burning beneath orbital fire. Families running through destroyed streets. Several council members looked sick. This was genocide, one whispered. Terran lowered his head. Yes, the room fell silent once more. But humanity survived, he continued. And now they know we lied to the galaxy. At that exact moment, every alarm inside the Senate Tower suddenly activated. Warning, unknown fleet detected. The entire chamber froze. An officer rushed inside breathlessly. "Admiral," he shouted. Multiple ships just appeared above Nexer Prime. Terran's face lost all color. "So soon," he whispered. The main screen instantly switched to orbital defense cameras. Dark warships floated above the capital world, human ships. But these vessels looked different from the ancient fleet in Sector 9. These were newer, faster, more advanced. And at the center stood one enormous flagship nearly the size of a moon. Citizens across Nexer Prime watched the sky in terror. Traffic stopped instantly. Emergency sirens screamed across cities. Children cried while families rushed indoors. For the first time in centuries, the capital world felt fear. Then every communication screen across the planet activated together. A human figure appeared. Not an alien, not a machine, a real human. He wore a dark military uniform with silver markings across the chest. His face looked calm, cold, focused, but his eyes carried something terrifying. "Memory. My name is Admiral Elias Ward," the human said clearly. His voice echoed across the entire planet. For centuries, the Alliance called humanity a myth. Behind him stood thousands of human soldiers, motionless as statues. "You erased our history." Elias continued. "You murdered our worlds." The people of Nexer Prime listened in complete silence. But humanity survived in the shadows. The camera slowly zoomed closer toward his face. "And while your empire grew comfortable," he said quietly, "we prepared." Suddenly, hundreds of Alliance defense ships launched from the planet below. Massive cruisers filled the sky, weapons glowing brightly. The Senate chamber erupted with hope. "Our defense fleet can still stop them," one council member shouted. But Admiral Terran looked terrified instead. "No," he whispered. "They cannot." The human admiral turned slightly as if already expecting the attack. Then he gave one simple order. "Show them." In the next second, space itself exploded with movement. Human ships moved faster than scanners could track. Blue flashes ripped across orbit. Alliance cruisers vanished instantly. Entire battle lines collapsed within seconds. The council members stared in horror. The battle was not a fight, it was destruction. One by one, the Alliance warships exploded across the skies of Nexer Prime. The human fleet barely slowed down. Within 4 minutes, the capital defense fleet no longer existed. Burning debris rained across the atmosphere like falling stars. Silence filled the Senate chamber again. Then Admiral Elias Ward looked directly into the camera once more. "This is not revenge," he said calmly. The burning skies reflected in his cold eyes. "This is a warning." Then the transmission ended. And for the very first time in galactic history, the mighty Alliance realized humanity had not returned for peace. The destruction of Nexer Prime spread across the galaxy within hours. Every news network, every military station, every hidden colony, all of them showed the same terrifying images. Human warships floating above the burning capital world. The Alliance had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. Nobody had ever attacked the capital successfully until humanity returned. Fear spread faster than light itself. On distant planets, civilians rushed into underground shelters. Trade routes collapsed overnight. Entire fleets disappeared from public channels. Every species asked the same question: how strong are the humans? But nobody knew the answer. Inside the damaged Senate Tower of Nexer Prime, Supreme Admiral Terran prepared for war. The once proud command hall now looked broken. Smoke filled the air. Emergency lights flashed red. Half the giant windows were shattered from orbital shockwaves. Military officers worked without rest. "We lost 40% of the defense fleet," one officer reported. "Communication with outer colonies is failing." Another officer looked terrified. "More human fleets have appeared near border sectors." Terran closed his eyes for a moment. Humanity was moving faster than expected, much faster. Then a new transmission arrived. "Admiral," a technician said nervously. "We intercepted a human signal." Terran immediately turned toward the screen. "Play it," he ordered. Static appeared for several seconds. Then the image cleared. A human child appeared on screen. The command room became silent in confusion. The little girl looked no older than 10. She sat beside a window inside a human colony ship, staring peacefully at the stars. Then her soft voice spoke. "My grandfather told me stories about Earth," she said quietly. "He said the sky there was blue." The officers exchanged confused looks. The girl continued. "He said humans once trusted the galaxy." Suddenly the screen changed. Burning human cities appeared again. Dead civilians covered destroyed streets. Alliance warships fired endlessly from orbit. Several officers lowered their heads uncomfortably. The child's voice returned. "But the galaxy burned our home." Then the transmission ended instantly. The command room remained silent for several long seconds. One officer finally whispered, "Why would they send us that?" Terran answered quietly, "Because this war is personal." Far beyond Alliance territory, hidden deep inside a black nebula, the human fleet gathered silently. Thousands of warships floated together like a moving shadow across the stars. Inside the massive flagship Judgment, Admiral Elias Ward stood before a giant holographic map. Human commanders surrounded him quietly. One officer pointed towards several red sectors. "Alliance fleets are regrouping here. Here and here," she explained. "They are preparing counterattacks." Elias nodded slowly. "They still think this is a normal war," he said calmly. Another commander looked toward him carefully. "Should we destroy the capital completely?" he asked. The room became silent. Elias stared at the hologram for several moments before answering. "No," he said finally, "not yet." The officers understood immediately. Humanity did not only want victory, they wanted the galaxy to remember. Suddenly alarms activated across the flagship. "Unidentified jump signatures detected," shouted a scanner officer. The hologram instantly changed. Hundreds of Alliance warships suddenly appeared near the nebula entrance. Massive battleships, heavy destroyers, elite hunter fleets. The Alliance had finally sent its strongest military force. Leading them was Grand Marshal Riven, the most feared commander in Alliance history, inside his flagship Stormbreaker. Raven stared coldly at the human fleet ahead. Unlike the others, he did not fear humans. He hated them. "We should have finished them long ago," he growled. An officer beside him looked nervous. "Sir, reports say human ships are nearly unstoppable." Raven slammed his fist against the command chair. "There is no unstoppable enemy," he snapped. "Only weak commanders." Back inside the Judgment, human officers prepared calmly for battle. No panic, no fear, only silence. Admiral Elias watched the incoming fleet carefully. Then he noticed something strange. One Alliance ship carried an old symbol on its hull, a black claw marked with silver stars. Elias' expression darkened instantly. He recognized that symbol. The same fleet that attacked Earth centuries ago. One human commander noticed his reaction. "Sir?" Elias slowly clenched his hands behind his back. "So they sent executioners again," he said quietly. The temperature inside the command room suddenly felt colder. Then Elias gave a single order. No retreat. Across the nebula, both fleets moved toward each other. Thousands of ships entering battle positions together. The stars themselves disappeared behind endless walls of metal and weapons. Alliance cannons charged brightly. Human engines glowed deep blue. Missile systems locked targets across millions of kilometers. It was no longer a hidden war. It was the beginning of galactic extinction. Then Grand Marshal Riven opened a direct communication channel to the human flagship. Elias accepted immediately. For the first time, both commanders faced each other directly. Raven smiled coldly. "You should have stayed extinct," he said. Elias stared at him without emotion. "And you should have left Earth alone," Raven laughed softly. "Humanity lost centuries ago." Elias stepped closer to the screen. "No," he answered quietly. "Humanity survived centuries ago." Then both transmissions ended together, and 1 second later, The largest battle since the fall of Earth began. The battle inside the Black Nebula turned space into fire. Thousands of ships collided across the darkness. Missiles crossed like burning storms. Massive explosions lit the void brighter than stars. Entire fleets vanished within seconds. But something quickly became clear. The humans were not fighting like normal soldiers. They moved with terrifying precision. Every attack felt planned years before it happened. Every ship protected the others perfectly. Every retreat became a trap. Grand Marshal Raven watched the battle from the bridge of the Stormbreaker. His confidence slowly disappeared. "Report," he demanded angrily. An officer looked pale. "We lost 17 destroyers in 4 minutes. Another officer interrupted immediately. "Our left flank collapsed." A third voice shouted from another station. "Human fighters are inside our formation." Raven stared at the chaotic battlefield in disbelief. The Alliance fleet was larger, but the humans controlled the battle completely. Then the main screen suddenly changed. A human symbol appeared across every monitor. A silver phoenix rising through fire. The officers froze instantly. Raven's eyes widened slowly. "No," he whispered. He knew that symbol. The Phoenix Division. The deadliest human military force from the ancient war. According to Alliance history, they were destroyed centuries ago. But history had lied again. Suddenly, dozens of Alliance warships exploded at the center of the battlefield. Human stealth ships emerged directly inside enemy formations. Blue energy blades ripped through heavy cruisers like paper. Engines detonated violently. Escape pods burned before launching. Panic spread rapidly through Alliance communications. "We can't track them. They're everywhere. Our scanners are blind." Raven slammed his hand against the console. "Focus fire on the human flagship," he roared. Hundreds of Alliance weapons instantly targeted the Judgment. The massive human flagship finally moved forward slowly through the firestorm. Its dark armor reflected the burning battlefield around it. Inside the command deck, Admiral Elias Ward stood silently while explosions flashed outside the windows. A young human officer looked worried. "Sir, enemy fleet preparing concentrated attack." Elias nodded calmly. "Open channel," he said. Seconds later, Raven's face appeared again. This time anger filled his eyes. "You think this changes anything?" Raven shouted. "The Alliance still controls the galaxy." Elias looked at him quietly for several seconds before answering. "The galaxy already fell," he said softly. "It just hasn't realized it yet," Raven growled furiously. "You humans always believed you were special." For the first time, emotion appeared in Elias' eyes. "No," he answered. "We simply believed trust mattered." Then Elias activated another transmission. This one spread far beyond the battlefield. Across every planet, every station, every civilian network in the galaxy, the truth finally appeared. Ancient Alliance recordings filled public screens everywhere. Secret meetings between old senators. Orders approving human extermination. Military fleets preparing attacks against Earth. Billions of civilians across the galaxy watched in shock. The Alliance had hidden the truth for centuries. Humanity was never the aggressor. They were victims on countless worlds. Riots immediately began. Citizens stormed government buildings. Military officers abandoned positions. Entire colonies disconnected from Alliance control. Fear was becoming rebellion. Inside the Senate Tower, Supreme Admiral Terran watched the chaos unfold silently. One officer turned toward him desperately. "The galaxy is collapsing," he whispered. Terran looked broken. "Because we built it on lies," he answered quietly. Back in the Nebula battle, the Alliance fleet slowly began losing formation. Some captains retreated. Others stopped firing completely. Confusion spread through every channel. But Raven refused to surrender. "We finish this now," he growled. Then he gave a horrifying order. "Activate the Sunbreaker." Several officers stared at him in disbelief. "Sir, that weapon is forbidden." Raven turned coldly toward them. "So was genocide," he answered. Deep inside the Stormbreaker, massive hidden systems began waking up. Power flooded through ancient reactors. Entire sections of the ship glowed red. Warning alarms screamed across nearby vessels. Even human scanners detected it instantly. A human officer looked shocked. "Sir." Massive energy readings. Another officer's face became pale. That energy level could destroy entire planets. Elias stared at the enemy flagship carefully. Then he finally understood. The Alliance had kept its old monster hidden all this time. The same weapon class used against Earth centuries ago. The Sunbreaker, a weapon designed for extinction. Across the battlefield, Alliance ships quickly retreated away from Riven's flagship. Even they feared the weapon. Riven smiled darkly as energy gathered around the Stormbreaker. "If humanity wants war," he said quietly, "then humanity dies tonight, inside the Judgment." Silence filled the command deck. Everyone waited for Elias to give orders. Retreat. Attack. Something. But Elias remained completely calm. Then he slowly looked toward his officers. "Prepare the gate," he said quietly. The room instantly became silent. One commander stepped forward nervously. "Sir, if we activate it now—" Elias interrupted him. "The galaxy is already burning," he answered. Far behind the human fleet, darkness itself suddenly began moving. At first, it looked like space was tearing apart. Then something enormous emerged slowly from the void. Larger than fleets, larger than cities, larger than imagination itself. An ancient human war machine hidden since the fall of Earth. And when Alliance scanners finally understood what was appearing before them, fear spread through every remaining ship in the nebula. Because the humans had not brought an army to this war. They had brought the weapon that once terrified the entire galaxy. The battle inside the Black Nebula turned space into fire. Thousands of ships collided across the darkness. Missiles crossed like burning storms. Massive explosions lit the void brighter than stars. Entire fleets vanished within seconds. But something quickly became clear. The humans were not fighting like normal soldiers. They moved with terrifying precision. Every attack felt planned years before it happened. Every ship protected the others perfectly. Every retreat became a trap. Grand Marshal Raven watched the battle from the bridge of the Stormbreaker. His confidence slowly disappeared. "Report," he demanded angrily. An officer looked pale. "We lost 17 destroyers in 4 minutes. Another officer interrupted immediately. "Our left flank collapsed." A third voice shouted from another station. "Human fighters are inside our formation." Riven stared at the chaotic battlefield in disbelief. The Alliance fleet was larger, but the humans controlled the battle completely. Then the main screen suddenly changed. A human symbol appeared across every monitor, a silver phoenix rising through fire. The officers froze instantly. Riven's eyes widened slowly. "No," he whispered. He knew that symbol. The Phoenix Division, the deadliest human military force from the ancient war. According to Alliance history, they were destroyed centuries ago. But history had lied again. Suddenly, dozens of Alliance warships exploded at the center of the battlefield. Human stealth ships emerged directly inside enemy formations. Blue energy blades ripped through heavy cruisers like paper. Engines detonated violently. Escape pods burned before launching. Panic spread rapidly through Alliance communications. "We can't track them. They're everywhere. Our scanners are blind." Riven slammed his hand against the console. "Focus fire on the human flagship," he roared. Hundreds of Alliance weapons instantly targeted the Judgment. The massive human flagship finally moved forward slowly through the firestorm. Its dark armor reflected the burning battlefield around it. Inside the command deck, Admiral Elias Ward stood silently while explosions flashed outside the windows. A young human officer looked worried. "Sir, enemy fleet preparing concentrated attack." Elias nodded calmly. "Open channel," he said. Seconds later, Riven's face appeared again. This time anger filled his eyes. "You think this changes anything?" Riven shouted. "The Alliance still controls the galaxy." Elias looked at him quietly for several seconds before answering. "The galaxy already fell," he said softly. "It just hasn't realized it yet," Riven growled furiously. "You humans always believed you were special." For the first time, emotion appeared in Elias' eyes. "No," he answered. "We simply believed trust mattered." Then Elias activated another transmission. This one spread far beyond the battlefield, across every planet, every station, every civilian network in the galaxy. The truth finally appeared. Ancient Alliance recordings filled public screens everywhere, secret meetings between old senators, orders approving human extermination, military fleets preparing attacks against Earth. Billions of civilians across the galaxy watched in shock. The Alliance had hidden the truth for centuries. Humanity was never the aggressor, they were victims. On countless worlds, riots immediately began. Citizens stormed government buildings. Military officers abandoned positions. Entire colonies disconnected from Alliance control. Fear was becoming rebellion. Inside the Senate Tower, Supreme Admiral Terran watched the chaos unfold silently. One officer turned toward him desperately. "The galaxy is collapsing," he whispered. Terran looked broken. "Because we built it on lies," he answered quietly. Back in the Nebula battle, the Alliance fleet slowly began losing formation. Some captains retreated, others stopped firing completely. Confusion spread through every channel, but Riven refused to surrender. "We finish this now," he growled. Then he gave a horrifying order. "Activate the Sunbreaker." Several officers stared at him in disbelief. "Sir, that weapon is forbidden." Riven turned coldly toward them. "So is genocide," he answered. Deep inside the Stormbreaker, massive hidden systems began waking up. Power flooded through ancient reactors. Entire sections of the ship glowed red. Warning alarms screamed across nearby vessels. Even human scanners detected it instantly. A human officer looked shocked. "Sir." Massive energy readings. Another officer's face became pale. That energy level could destroy entire planets. Elias stared at the enemy flagship carefully. Then he finally understood. The Alliance had kept its old monster hidden all this time. The same weapon class used against Earth centuries ago. The Sunbreaker, a weapon designed for extinction. Across the battlefield, Alliance ships quickly retreated away from Riven's flagship. Even they feared the weapon. Raven smiled darkly as energy gathered around the Stormbreaker. "If humanity wants war," he said quietly, "then humanity dies tonight." Inside the Judgment, silence filled the command deck. Everyone waited for Elias to give orders. Retreat, attack, something. But Elias remained completely calm. Then he slowly looked toward his officers. "Prepare the gate," he said quietly. The room instantly became silent. One commander stepped forward nervously. "Sir, if we activate it now." Elias interrupted him. "The galaxy is already burning," he answered, far behind the human fleet. Darkness itself suddenly began moving. At first, it looked like space was tearing apart. Then something enormous emerged slowly from the void. Larger than fleets, larger than cities, larger than imagination itself. An ancient human war machine, hidden since the fall of Earth. And when Alliance scanners finally understood what was appearing before them, fear spread through every remaining ship in the nebula. Because the humans had not brought an army to this war, they had brought the weapon that once terrified the entire galaxy. Start with part 6 more unique 700 words. The giant machine emerging from the darkness looked less like a ship and more like a moving world. Even stars disappeared behind its massive shadow. Alliance scanners failed repeatedly while trying to measure its size. Every report returned the same answer. ERROR, object too large. Panic exploded across Alliance communication channels. "What is that thing?" "No ship can be that big. Retreat immediately." But there was nowhere left to run. The ancient human machine moved silently through the nebula like a sleeping god waking after centuries. Its black metal surface carried deep scars from forgotten wars. Massive cannons stretched across its body like mountain ranges. Blue lights glowed slowly beneath layers of armor thicker than cities. And at the center of the machine, one symbol burned brightly: the Silver Phoenix. Inside the Stormbreaker, Grand Marshal Riven stared at the screen in disbelief. For the first time in his military career, fear touched his face. "That weapon was destroyed," he whispered. One officer shook his head nervously. Alliance records were wrong. Raven slowly stepped closer to the display. "No," he said quietly. "We were lied to again." Inside the human flagship Judgment, The crew remained calm while the massive machine continued activating behind them. Admiral Elias Ward stood before the main window silently. One young officer looked toward him carefully. "Sir, the Ark is fully awake." The Ark, the last human world forge, the final defense machine created during Earth's fall. Human history called it many names: the Titan, the Gravekeeper, the end of empires, but most humans simply called it hope, because the Ark carried the last surviving memory of Earth itself. Cities, forests, human DNA, archives, ancient culture. Everything the Alliance tried to erase. Elias looked at the giant machine quietly. "They wanted humanity forgotten," he said softly. "So we became impossible to destroy." Suddenly the Stormbreaker fired first. The Sunbreaker weapon unleashed a massive beam of burning white energy across the nebula. Entire human cruisers vanished instantly in its path. Asteroids melted into vapor. Space itself seemed to tear apart. The blast struck the Ark directly. For several seconds, the battlefield disappeared inside pure light. Alliance crews watched hopefully. "No ship survives that," one officer whispered. Then the light slowly faded, and the Ark remained standing, not destroyed, not damaged, still moving forward. Silence spread across every channel in the nebula. Several Alliance officers looked horrified. It survived. Then something changed across the Ark's surface. Thousands of hidden sections slowly opened together. Massive weapon systems emerged from inside the ancient machine. Cannons larger than destroyers. Missile ports stretching for kilometers. Energy reactors glowing brighter than suns. The Ark was no longer defending itself. Now it was preparing to fight. Inside the Judgment, warning lights flashed across the command deck. "Ark weapon systems online," reported an officer. Another officer turned toward Elias nervously. "Sir, once the Ark fires, there is no turning back." Elias remained silent for several moments. Then he spoke quietly. "There was no turning back the day Earth burned, across the battlefield." Raven screamed new orders desperately. "All fleets attack now," he roared. "Destroy the Ark before it fires." Hundreds of Alliance ships charged together toward the giant machine. Missiles filled space like endless storms. Heavy cannons shook entire sectors. Fighter swarms rushed toward the Ark from every direction. But the human fleet instantly moved to protect it. Human destroyers formed defensive walls. Stealth fighters intercepted incoming missiles. Blue energy shields expanded across the battlefield. The nebula became pure chaos. Ships exploded endlessly. Fire covered the stars. Broken fleets drifted through the darkness like dead worlds. Then the Ark finally fired. One massive pulse wave exploded outward from the machine. No sound existed in space, yet every soldier felt it. The wave crossed the battlefield in seconds. Alliance shields collapsed instantly. Weapon systems shut down completely. Entire warships froze motionless in space. The Ark had not destroyed them. It had silenced them. Inside the Stormbreaker, every screen suddenly turned black. Power failed across the flagship. Emergency systems collapsed. The Sunbreaker weapon died instantly. Raven stared around the dark bridge in shock. "What did they do?" he whispered. One terrified engineer answered slowly. "They disabled the entire fleet." Across the battlefield, human ships surrounded the helpless Alliance armada silently. Thousands of weapons locked targets together. The war was over, but then something unexpected happened. Admiral Elias opened a galaxy-wide transmission once more. Every world received the signal instantly. Civilians, soldiers, leaders, rebels, all of them watched quietly. Elias stood before the camera while burning ships floated behind him. "Humanity could end the galaxy today," he said calmly. "Nobody moved, nobody breathed. But we remember what it means to lose a home." He continued, "And we will not become the monsters you feared." Inside the Senate Tower, Supreme Admiral Terran lowered his head in shame. Because at that moment, the truth finally became clear. The Alliance feared humans for centuries, not because humans were cruel, but because humans never lost their humanity. Then Elias spoke one final sentence that echoed across the stars forever. "The war ends now." And across the battlefield, every human weapon slowly powered down together. 3 months after the Battle of the Black Nebula, The galaxy was no longer the same. The old alliance had collapsed faster than anyone believed possible. Worlds once controlled by fear now stood silent and uncertain. Military fleets surrendered without resistance. Ancient governments disappeared overnight, and across thousands of planets, one name was spoken with equal parts fear and respect. Humanity. But the humans did not invade worlds. They did not conquer cities. They did not demand loyalty. Instead, they vanished once again. The giant Ark disappeared beyond known space together with the human fleet. No one knew where they went. Some believed humans returned to hidden colonies. Others believed they left the galaxy forever. But one thing became certain: the myth was now real history. On Nexer Prime, the broken Senate Tower still stood beneath a damaged sky. The scars of battle remained visible everywhere. Burned streets, destroyed defense stations, silent memorial walls inside the highest chamber. Former Supreme Admiral Terran sat alone beside the giant windows. The once powerful leader looked old now. Tired, broken, forgotten. For weeks he had waited for human soldiers to arrest him. But they never came. A quiet sound suddenly echoed through the chamber doors. Terran slowly looked up. A young officer entered carefully. "Sir," she said softly, "there's someone here to see you." Terran frowned. "Who?" The officer hesitated nervously. "A human." The room instantly became silent. Moments later, a lone figure walked into the chamber. Admiral Elias Ward. No guards followed him. No weapons pointed forward. Only silence surrounded the human commander. Terran stared at him carefully. "You came to finish this?" he asked quietly. Elias walked slowly toward the broken windows overlooking the city. "No," he answered calmly. "I came to understand why." Terran lowered his eyes. For several moments, neither man spoke. Finally, Terran broke the silence. "We feared you," he admitted. Elias nodded slightly. "I know. You grew too fast," Terran continued. "Humans united worlds we could never control." Outside the window, repair ships moved through the damaged sky quietly. Terran's voice became heavier. "The Alliance believed humanity would replace us." Elias looked toward him slowly. "So you destroyed Earth," he said. Terran closed his eyes painfully. "Yes." The word echoed through the empty chamber like a confession carried for centuries. For a long moment, Elias said nothing. Then he walked closer to the shattered glass wall. "When Earth burned," he said quietly, "humanity had two choices." Terran listened silently. "We could become monsters," Elias continued, "or we could survive without losing who we were." Terran looked at him with confusion. "You had every reason to destroy us," he whispered. Elias finally faced him directly. "And you had every reason not to start the war." The room fell silent again. Far below the tower, civilians moved through the streets, rebuilding their worlds slowly. Different species worked beside each other peacefully for the first time in generations. The old alliance was gone. But maybe something better could replace it. Terran looked toward Elias carefully. "What happens now?" he asked. Elias reached into his coat slowly. Several hidden guards outside the chamber instantly panicked. But Elias simply placed a small object onto the table. A blue sphere no larger than a hand. Terran stared at it in confusion. "What is this?" Elias looked at the glowing sphere quietly. "The last complete archive of Earth," he answered. Terran's eyes widened. Inside the sphere existed everything humanity had saved. Its history, its music, its oceans, its cities, its people. An entire lost world preserved inside light. "Why give this to me?" Terran whispered. Elias answered softly. "Because someone must remember the truth." Terran stared at the sphere with shaking hands. For the first time in many years, tears slowly formed in his eyes. Outside the chamber, sunlight finally broke through Nexer Prime's dark clouds. A new dawn rising over a galaxy that survived its own lies. Elias turned and began walking toward the exit quietly. But before leaving, he stopped one final time. Without looking back, he spoke the words that would later spread across every world in the galaxy. "Humanity was never the warning," he said calmly. "The warning was what fear makes people become." Then he disappeared beyond the chamber doors, and no one in the galaxy ever saw Admiral Elias Ward again. Years later, children across countless worlds would grow up hearing stories about humanity. Not as monsters, not as myths, but as survivors. Some still feared them. Some admired them. But nobody laughed at the old warnings anymore, because deep in the unknown darkness beyond explored space, the Ark still traveled silently between the stars, watching, waiting, remembering. And somewhere aboard that endless moving world, humanity continued forward, unbroken, unforgotten, and finally understood.